Good morning. Well, it's me again. First, I would like to say thank you to Bishop Delzer. I've worked with him for many years now. I've learned so much from him. He has supported us. He's given us vision. And he and his staff, it's just, I don't know what to say. This is just marvelous. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of Churchwide, Global Mission, and also on my behalf at a personal level. And I thank all of you. First, I would like to, at this time, bring greetings from our presiding bishop, Bishop Elizabeth Eaton, and ELCA Churchwide staff. Once again, thank you for your partnership, your accompaniment over the past years. For me, it is really a privilege to be here, to be present at this assembly. I'll explain why in a few minutes. But the work that is being done, the ministry that we've been engaged in together, our journey together, holding each other up, walking together, is every year it kind of gets better and better and better. I've worked at Global Mission now for about 20 years. Just in some of staff area, I have earned seniority. I know stories. I know what we've done together that I can tell. That is why I feel privileged to be here with you today. Before I move on, it would be important to have our own presiding bishop to address this assembly. And I would ask at this point to go ahead and run the tape.
When I am out and about the church, I often ask what is distinctly Lutheran about our witness to the gospel. Grace is almost always the answer. Many other Christian and religious traditions also claim that grace is important, if not foundational, to their self-understanding. So what do we, as the Lutheran movement, uniquely say about grace? Grace is the free gift of God. Martin Luther wrote, "Grace does so much that we are accounted completely righteous before God. For grace is not divided or parceled out, but takes us completely into favor for the sake of Christ, our intercessor and mediator." Luther is making the evangelical point about grace, that it is not up to us. Rather, it is God's good pleasure. Grace is not something God does, rather grace is who God is. This gracious God is not an abstraction, but is made known in the flesh and blood person, Jesus. Sometimes I think we have the nagging doubt that free doesn't really mean free. Some might disbelieve for joy How is it possible that it is God's good and gracious will to give this grace? How is it possible that God can love so completely? How can I be so loved? This is a transactional world, after all. I do something for you, so you will do something for me. We either can or must do something to set the transaction in motion. It is contrary to the way of the world that so much life should be given so freely. Or somehow, we need to hedge our bets and supplement God's action. This is not new amongst the people of God. In Exodus, we see that the Israelites find themselves in the wilderness wandering and hungry. Memories of the flesh pots of Egypt had erased the bitter taste of slavery, oppression, and infanticide. So God promised bread to eat, and God promised enough. Inevitably, some gathered more, adding human agency to God's gift. These were the "there's no such thing as a free lunch" Israelites. And some gathered less, unable to believe such complete love. These were the Lutheran Israelites. My hope is that when we in the ELCA speak about grace, we will speak as true evangelicals. That God, out of an abundantly fatherly or parental love, not only created all things, including humankind, good, but God also sent Jesus as the embodiment of that very love to save us from ourselves, enduring the worst that humankind could do against God's embodied mercy, even enduring the rejection, humiliation, and shame of the cross, and raised Jesus as a demonstration and promise of God's forgiving love. Here's a good Lutheran question. What does this mean? It means that we are free. We are free from spiritual bondage, from the law's accusation and judgment, from the necessity of saving ourselves. And we are free for love and service to our neighbors. The freedom that comes from God's grace propels us into the public square. Our work in advocacy and disaster relief, ELCA World Hunger, God's Work Our Hands Sunday, all flow from the freedom we have in Christ. Luther was pretty clear when he wrote, "A Christian is Lord of all, completely free of everything. A Christian is servant of all, completely attentive to the needs of all." I have a vision of the Lutheran movement spilling out into the streets in joyful service to the world God so loves. Thousands and thousands of us in our yellow God's Work Our Hands t-shirts, engaged in our communities, bringing hope and wholeness. We can be the alternative face of Christianity in today's culture. When the world sees the church only as judging and condemning and excluding, we can show the way of God's love and mercy that are meant for all people, all. Grace means that there is no one group of people who can claim supremacy over others, since we are all equally in need of God's forgiveness and all equally recipients of God's free, generous outpouring of grace. There are Lutherans all over the world. We come in all colors and sizes. A Mighty Fortress is sung in hundreds of languages and styles. I've even heard it on bagpipes. There are more Lutherans of color in the Lutheran World Federation than there are of European descent. So if culture or cuisine don't define us, what does? It is our witness to and confidence in a gracious God who in Jesus loves us to the end. This grace is too big to be contained. It breaks the divisions that we have constructed and unites all of us into one family. So, dear church, set free by God's grace, we are sent into the world. This is only possible because we find our lives in Christ. We gather around word and sacraments, and strengthened again, we are free as church together to be church for the sake of the world.
I'm a Lutheran.
Benyam Lutheran.
I'm a Lutheran.
Soy un luterano.
I am a Lutheran.
Lutheran. We are Lutheran.
ខ្ញុំជា Lutheran.
I am a Lutheran.
أنا Lutheran.
It is a great pleasure to be part of this church, to say proudly that we are Lutheran and we are Christians. And God has called us to this work, to this ministry, especially as this morning I turned this on and listened to it, and I was kind of listening to God's grace, God's mercy. what made us who we are as a church and what we ought to share with the rest of the world and with our neighbors and our colleagues. The other major thing that happened this year and this fall that is going to the fall Conference of Bishops is that the Church Council in recent meeting, they approved the release of the entrance right discernment group recommendation. The entrance right discernment group recommends the use of ordination as the right of setting apart both ministers of word and sacrament and ministries of word and service. With this recommendation, the recommendation goes on this to establish the right of ordination as the entrance right for deacons entering the roster ministries of word and service. And second, define the symbol of this ministry as deacon's stole and a cross, both to be presented at the entrance right. Third, direct the worship staff of the ALCA to develop an appropriate rite and rubrics for the ordination of deacons. Number four, direct the worship staff of the ALCA to share information about the appropriate use of the deacon's stole and to facilitate a conversation among deacons regarding a unified cross design. Number five, charge the secretary to propose, the ALCA secretary to propose appropriate amendments to the constitutions, bylaws, and continuing resolution of the church that will ensure that at least 60% of the members of the assemblies, councils, committees, boards, and other organizational units shall be persons who are not on that are not the rosters of word and service or word and sacrament. Number six, review the ELCA candidacy process for appropriate modification as necessary. And number seven, charge the secretary to consider and propose possible amendments to the constitutions, bylaws, and continuing resolution of this church to accomplish its recommendation. So this ministry now is taking life and just recognizing the ministry that is this, as an ordained minister of this church, we will be having this entrance right. And this will be going to the bishops, Conference of Bishops this fall. And members, clergy, everyone is requested to give their feedback, and you can find this in the ELC on the website to give feedback as you need to, if you have comment and support this idea, or just add your thoughts. And what a blessing to extend our ministry among us and to serve God's people. At this time, may I ask those who are entering this rite, if they are here in this audience, if they can rise and that we recognize them, deacons and rosters and this. We just wanted to recognize and just say thank you for your ministry and for your calling, for accepting this call and serving this church. Thank you, and God bless you. At this time, I have another video on ELCA 2017 a review. Is that on this or there?
Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, 2017 Year in Review. Future Directions. Future Directions 2025 is based on a shared trust that the future is in God's hands. It expresses what this church has collectively identified as priorities into the future. Always Being Made New, the campaign for the ELCA. $174.5 million total impact for the ELCA and its ministries, including more than $30.5 million in planned gifts. 81% of congregations currently participate. Mission support. Through our offerings, we participate in God's life-changing work in our communities and around the world. In 2017, ELCA members gave generously more than $1.7 billion in unrestricted offerings. 94.3% was stewarded by congregations, 3.1% was stewarded by synods, and 2.6% was stewarded by the ELCA Churchwide organization. Faith formation. More than 180 ELCA campus ministries in the U.S., 26 ELCA-affiliated colleges and universities, 7 ELCA seminaries, nearly 100 youth participating in Youth Leadership Summit. Congregational vitality. Communities of Jesus that nurture life-changing relationships with God, one another, and the world. 151 ministries were supported with Congregational Vitality Partnership support. More than 670 leaders were trained in congregational development. 431 new ministries are currently under development. 59 new starts were approved in 2017. 56% of all new starts are among ethnic multicultural communities. 30 local mission gatherings took place around the United States. Lutheran disaster response. Our response efforts in 2017 were close to home and across the globe. 30 disaster responses in 21 countries. 17 disaster responses in 15 states, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. More than $22 million in donations from you made this work possible. ELCA World Hunger. $21.3 million raised for 518 projects that help fight hunger in 62 countries, including the U.S. This represents the largest year of direct giving to ELCA World Hunger in the program's history. Because of this growth, 9 brand new projects in 6 countries joined the fight to end hunger. Global mission. In relationship with more than 85 of the 145 Lutheran World Federation member churches across 94 countries, more than 200 grants provided for evangelism and leadership to those partners. 11 new global ministry and evangelism projects. 230 missionaries, including 93 young adults and global mission volunteers in more than 40 countries. Amparo, accompanying migrant minors for protection, advocacy, representation, and opportunities. 41,435 unaccompanied children entered the U.S. 75,622 families with one parent and 1 or more children entered in the southwestern U.S. alone. 76 welcoming and sanctuary congregations across 26 synods, 5 sanctuary synods. Advocacy. 34,255 messages were sent to Congress and the administration through the ELCA Advocacy Action Center. More than 30,000 ELCA Advocacy Network members. 231 visits to members of Congress in Washington, D.C. Ecumenical and interreligious relations. Celebrating more than 50 years of dialogue with the Catholic Church in the U.S. Strengthening partnerships with the historic Black churches. Presiding Bishop Eaton was honored with the Interfaith Unity Award from the Islamic Society of North America Convention. A declaration of our interreligious commitment, a draft policy statement, was completed in preparation for public review through June 30th, 2018. Leadership. Presiding Bishop Elizabeth Eaton says, "It's not only the job of our seminaries and universities to identify and raise up leaders in the church. This is something that belongs to all of us." more than $4 million given to the ELCA Fund for Leaders, 251 seminary students receiving financial assistance during 2017 to 2018, 130 students receiving financial support from the International Leaders Program. The International Women Leaders Initiative provides scholarships for 19 young women from 10 global companion churches. These leaders are studying at 7 ELCA colleges and universities. ELCA in the news. The ELCA was featured across local, regional, national, and international media, National Public Radio, The Atlantic, BBC World News, NBC, Good Housekeeping, and many more. 500th anniversary of the Reformation. A year-long commemoration included with new voices and Our Lutheran Life video series, Living Lutherans 500 Facts of the Reformation, elca500.org. Day-long event with ecumenical and interreligious partners in Washington, D.C. on October 31st, with hundreds in attendance and thousands watching live. 110 article placements in the media with more than 2 million impressions. We are church. We are Lutheran. We are church together. We are church for the sake of the world. Thank you. Learn more at elca.org.
If you need a detailed report on this program's 2017 as a church, what we all did together, we have the 2018 Synod Assembly Churchwide report. We have those, and you may be able to find that on our ELCA website, and so that is available. And sometimes it's good to have those and share with others that we work with, and what do we do? How do we serve God's people around the world, also in our surroundings? As I've mentioned yesterday, it is for us, for all of us, it is a privilege to be the church, being a church together, serving God's people together. As you heard this program, on this earlier video, what we have accomplished together, that took a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of support from every synod, every member, every congregation in this church. In particular about this synod. Let me come clean. I wasn't planning to come to this Synod Assembly. I wasn't planning to go to any Synod Assembly this year. I just didn't plan on it until I was asked if I would be willing to come to Southeastern Minnesota Synod. I had to rearrange, in that case, my schedule to be here. Why? I haven't said this to when they gave us some orientation. I didn't tell them this, but I had not only representing ELCA, I had personal interest to come here just to say thank you in person. Let me go through a couple of things that Bishop Delzer went through, and I'll mention that and kind of move on. Together, from this Synod together, you all made it possible for your Synod to share $804,981 for mission support. You supported, that represents 48% of all the mission support that your congregation shared with the Synod. The mission support dollar that remained in your Synod supported the vital ministry, the work that you do here, and that is also very important. You gave sacrificially from what you have received. With ELCA World Hunger, I just want to thank you for your generous support of our work together toward a just world where all are fed through ELCA World Hunger. In 2017, gifts to ELCA World Hunger totaled over $21.3 million, with gifts from individuals and congregation. In this synod, totaling over $373,000. In addition to your local congregational effort to alleviate poverty and hunger, 22 ELCA World Hunger domestic hunger grants were awarded in Minnesota for a total of $62,700. We are a church together. The campaign for the ELCA, gifts by congregation and individuals in this synod to the campaign for the ELCA and its ministries, including ELCA World Hunger, ELCA Fund for Leaders, ELCA New Congregation, Renewing Congregation, Disability Ministry, Youth and Young Adults and Global Mission, and Missionaries, International Women Leaders and Global Ministries totaled about $813,653 in 2017. In 2016, it was $571,537. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your support. You have made this work and this ministry possible. Because I am a witness to this. The reason I came here is just to say this. In all your participation in everything that you've done, you see, I am one of the people who spend your money. I'm one of the people who take that money when it comes and go and put it somewhere. But carefully, though. We're very accountable, very serious, very cautious how we spend it, but we spend it. You also gave me opportunity that some of you did not have, to travel, to go and see those programs and projects, to work with our brothers and sisters around the world. You made it for us. You made it possible for us to do so we can become your mouth, your hand, your eyes, and your ears. That is what we have become. Some of you, yes, you have traveled. Some of you have gone out and seen what God has done through this church, through you, through this synod, through congregation, through individual giving. I just wanted to say thank you for the good work that you had done. I am an eyewitness. You know, the idea of eyewitness is very biblical. You know, John wrote, I'm not preaching, I'm just, if you have an issue with that, I'm not preaching. I'm just, anyway, what am I saying? I'm not going to tell the whole thing. But here, First John says, we declare to you what was from the beginning, he said, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked at and touched with our hands. The eyewitness. And Jesus also said something. Jesus said, you were with me from the beginning, and therefore you are my witnesses. Isn't that right? Didn't Jesus say that? I'm just kind of inferring from that and taking, I am eyewitness for the work that you have done. I'm here to tell you, when you gather here and talk about the work, the global work, the ministry that we are engaged in, we are the eyewitness for the work that has been done. The reason I kind of lift up South Sudan, I was there recently. I'm just kind of using that as an example. This is how we first started. It's an empty lot. Not much was there. A huge community, between 300 and 400,000 people in that area. But there's no facility, there's no school, there's no clinic, there's nothing at all when we started. And that is the area that you will see. Then when the program started, we start building. We put together. You see those beautiful paints on that building? You can even see it before you land. When you get to Juba, you can see it from the air. And I just loved it. God is using you and me. This is what the clinic and the Lutheran Center look like. On the 16th of November 2017, we had over 5,000 people gathered in that place to celebrate. We did not know that it would be that big. I didn't expect that. And when I got there, I really did not know how to handle it. And there's a huge crowd. That's why the disciples went to Jesus and say, what are we going to give to these people? There's a huge crowd. They said, give them something to eat. We are in the wilderness. My friends, even when you are in the wilderness, God has a way. God has a way to reach out to our brothers and sisters. The following week, the following Sunday after the celebration, we had a church service. I anticipated about, slow growth. We can plan on it. We can do this. And so it's easier to do it that way. And about 1,500 people show up. So I was there. The first Sunday I preached. Also, there's something behind in the back of my mind, just kind of going on. Now I said, what am I going to do? How are we going to support this program? I'm preaching too at the same time. What do we do? I was concerned. And then kids, youth, they come from all over. They look like they own that compound. They run around. I say, yes, they own it. It is theirs. God came to us through you, and we were able to reach out. That little baby is, I have to admit, was to prove the birth certificate as well. That is baby Benyam now. If I don't show you that, and what am I doing here? And the women are there learning how to sew as an income generating. God has called us to do this. If you went out and looked around that area, there's not much for the youth, for the women, for the children. Now there is a place. Now there is a place. Look at the joy. Look at the faces. Look at the smiles. That is what you and I can do together. Things that we cannot do separately. As a church, as a synod, as all of us together, here is what we can do. Where there's no hope, we preach hope. When there is no, where there's no cloud, we see cloud and that the rain is coming to give us some water for us. When there is nothing out there, we see something beyond. When there is no sunshine, when we don't know what direction to go, we know behind that cloud there is the sun still shining, but we have to get to it at one point. That is what you and I can do together. Some of those young people, I see them in groups. Sometimes I go look at them. I visit in some places, and some of them I see, and then I know when I come back, they may not be there. They may not be alive. That is what God is now calling us to do, to give life, to share life. God has used us in a very mighty way. Let me read one thing, and then I finish. I'm almost done, Bishop. You know, some of us are used to 5 and 7 hour service, and here you cut me off. Well, I'm not even started yet. I'm warming up yet. Can I have 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Let me read you a poem one of my colleagues wrote several years ago. He was the program director. He told me not to change it, not to print it, not to do anything, but I could use it. Where do sparrows die? Flitting from here and there they come, to sit and chat, sometimes sing, yet always digging, seeking the next morsel. They stop here and there. Where do sparrows die? One sparrow looks like another. As they swarm, I'm sorry, I'm a mess. As they swarm and group together, they are so small, so fragile. Being community gives security. Where do sparrows die? If one sparrow is missing, does anyone notice? There are so many. One little sparrow makes little difference. Where do sparrows die? Does anyone see when there is no food? Does anyone see when it is sick? Does anyone see the lifeless body? Does a sparrow make any difference? Where does a sparrow die? We weep over a lost sparrow. Who weeps over a lost sparrow? There are so many, no difference. Who holds the dying sparrow? Who knows where it is gone? Where do sparrows die? Children of Africa are like sparrows. Flitting from here and there, they come to sit and chat, sometimes sing, yet always digging, seeking the next morsel. They stop here and there. Where do children of Africa die? One African child looks like another. As they swarm and group together, they are so small, so fragile. Being community gives security. Where do the children of Africa die? If one child is missing, does anyone notice? There are so many. One little child makes little difference. Where do the children of Africa die? Does anyone see when there's no food? Does anyone see when it is sick? Does anyone see the lifeless body? Does a child make any difference? Where do the children of Africa die? Who weeps over an African child? There are so many, no difference. Who holds the dying child? Who knows when it is gone? Where do the children of Africa die? So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. My friends, please don't undermine what you have done for the lifeless, for the sick, for the lonely, for those who are left on their own. You've done a great job. May God bless you and God be with you. It is an honor and a privilege to work with you and to serve with you, God's people all over the world. Thank you and God bless you.